At 2:47 a.m., the silence over Bryansk broke like glass. Low over the treetops, four shapes carved a black path toward a single point on the map. Not a city, not a barracks, a brain. Electrodetal, the quiet heart that feeds Russia's war machines with eyes, nerves, and timing chips. Tonight, distance did not protect it, and doctrine did not predict it. This was a test of modern warfare where speed outran radar, deception drains missiles, and one precise hit can shake a whole supply chain. No slogans here, only a cold lesson. Depth is not safety when data, drones, and cruise missiles share one clock. Ukraine set the board for months, then moved once. Russia saw the threat, but not the route. What followed was not a chase. It was a decision loop collapsing in seconds. Stay with us as we unpack the recon, the weapons, the radar blind spots, the strike itself, and the shock that rippled through command posts. You're watching Military Force. Hit subscribe and share if you want clear maps, real numbers, and sharp breakdowns of weapons and strategy. The details start now. Electrodetal became a target because patterns, not slogans, told a clear story. For months, Ukrainian teams built a pattern of life file that tracked power draw at night, heat signatures on roofs, and the steady pulse of shift changes after midnight. Night lighting stayed high on weeknights, and even rose on some weekends, which often points to priority orders, tight delivery windows, or hotline production that cannot pause. Thermal cues from satellite passes showed warm corridors inside 2 halls long after normal hours, and those lines matched the footprint of machining bays and test benches. Truck traffic did not spike at the gates, but tractor-trailers lingered longer at the east loading dock, a sign of crated electronics that require careful handoff and paperwork. Freight cadence at the rail spur held a 3-day rhythm, then compressed to 48 hours in late September, which usually means a downstream deadline or a surge in component demand. Radio frequency sweeps caught short bursts near the QC building just before dawn, consistent with bench testing or data uploads, while the rest of the site stayed quiet on the spectrum. Commercial imagery from Planet and Maxar helped isolate the heart of the plant by comparing roof stains, HVAC stacks, and seasonal heat profiles that do not match simple storage. Analysts layered these pixels with public records on defense suppliers to map which bays likely handled guidance boards, timing units, and power modules used in cruise missiles and UAVs. The team then flagged movements of guarded vans that arrived without markings, yet followed repeat schedules, a common marker for secure electronics that move under quiet rules. Local logistics data hinted at parts flowing onward to at least 2 missile integrators, so a hit here would not break one line. It would touch several lines at once. Security posture also told a tale, because guard rotations thickened on the south perimeter after midnight, while cameras there shifted to narrower fields that favored one alley. That alley traced a service road with natural cover from trees and a shallow ridge, which also created a radar shadow beyond the plant and along a river bend. Weather logs showed low clouds and valley fog before sunrise on several days each month, and those windows shorten radar range and help low, fast objects stay hidden. By late September, the file held more than dots on a map. It held timing, habits, and weak seams that repeat, and repetition is what precision strikes need most. The assessment was simple yet hard. Electrodetal fed the nervous system of Russia's weapons, and its busiest core sat under a roof that could be reached from one massed approach. Hitting that core would stress guidance supply for drones and missiles, and even brief downtime would ripple through workshops that wait on exact chips and calibrated boards. But recon only wins when it leads to a clean shot, so the plan had to pair this picture with a weapon and a firing rhythm that beat the clock. With the target locked and the route defined by terrain and timing, the challenge turned from finding a weakness to choosing the tool and tempo to exploit it and still vanish alive. Neptune was built to sink ships, yet Ukraine adapted it for a fixed land target because effect matters more than labels. A cruise missile that flies low, steers with precision, and carries a focused warhead can punish a factory line, so the mission fit the tool once the guidance was tuned for ground coordinates. That choice shaped the firing rhythm and the way crews managed risk under hostile skies. The plan relied on salvo fire because timing beats mass when defenses are layered. Launching 4 rounds within seconds compresses detection, tracking, and engagement into a single problem, and that pressure forces operators to split attention or lose the window. A tight salvo also narrows the chance of late intercepts, which is why rate of fire becomes a survival skill as much as a strike method. Thermally insulated canisters made that rate possible, since crews did not wait for tubes to cool between shots. Heat soak often slows launch cycles on road mobile kits, but insulation turns minutes into seconds, and seconds decide whether a site lives or dies. Fast launch also shortens the time the battery sits static, which links directly to the escape drill that follows. Scoot time mattered because Russian counter-strike aircraft can cover distance quickly once radars note a plume. Packing down camouflage, rolling to a paved route, and blending into night traffic within about 5 minutes cuts the risk of a clean fix, while every extra minute raises it. Mobility here was not a luxury. It was the shield that kept people and launchers in the fight for another day. Guidance fused GPS with an inertial platform because redundancy is the only honest answer to electronic warfare. When jammers flood the air or spoofers lie to antennas, the missile can ignore the sky and trust its gyros and accelerometers to ride a memorized path. That handoff trades fresh updates for certainty, yet certainty is what matters when corridors are narrow and margins are thin. Terrain masking supported that guidance, since a low route hides behind ridges and river bends where radar cannot look cleanly. The autopilot held height while the mission computer followed pre-planned turns, and the combination squeezed engagement time for any battery that woke up late. This geometry does not make a missile invisible, but it makes a clear track hard to build in time. Warhead setup served the goal because structure, not scenery, was the target. A hardened charge with a short delay can punch through the roof and burst inside a hall, and that is where test benches and control racks do the real work. Damage inside a sealed volume multiplies as pressure reflects, which is why fuse settings matter as much as explosive weight. The battery's communications profile stayed small by design, since emissions invite geolocation and geolocation invites fire. Brief directional links push mission data and health checks before launch, while silence dominates during movement and site turnover. Discipline on the radios protects the rhythm that keeps a mobile unit alive. Every step aimed to compress the enemy decision loop while stretching the survival loop for the launch crew. Salvo fire, insulated canisters, rapid egress, and dual-mode navigation formed one chain, and a chain only works when each link holds. With weapon, tempo, and route aligned, the burden shifted to defeating sensors and pulling defenders away from the true path toward the factory's core. The route beat the sensors because terrain masking turns tall radars into short ones. The missiles rode river bends and shallow valleys where ground clutter is thick and the horizon is crooked, so the first look came late and at bad angles. Nebo M can see far, but its range shrinks when a target hides under ridgelines and stays below lobe height, and that geometry cuts warning time to seconds. Pre-planned waypoints hugged contours that block side lobe energy, while low altitude kept the track inside noise from trees, buildings, and power lines. Valley fog and pre-dawn temperature layers added loss to the radar path, which pushed detection even closer to the target area. The effect was simple. Operators saw something, but they saw it too late, and late contacts force rushed choices that favor the attacker. Because a short clock harms defenders, the plan treated the landscape as a shield and a clock at the same time. That is why guidance and geography worked as one timeline. Decoys widen the gap because defenses failed when they must fight two pictures at once. Banshee drones climbed into clean air with cooperative beacons that mimicked a strike package profile, so scopes showed a loud, fast group that drew eyes first. Pantsir S-1 batteries engaged the obvious cluster and paid in ready rounds, while reload drills stole minutes that could not be spared. Scramble calls launched Su-35s from their loops, and every mile flown toward the decoys pulled cover away from the real corridor. The decoy group also forced emitters to light up across sectors, which created a parade of search beams and missile illuminators that the attackers could map. When crews must divide tracking, queuing, and identification across many blips, the single low track gains room to breathe. This exchange trades cheap airframes for expensive interceptors and, more importantly, trades noise for time. That trade is what opens a lane to the core. Electronic warfare turned the duel into a contest of trust, not power. A 50 or A50U look-down radar can pierce terrain tricks by filtering moving targets against clutter, so the plan assumed a high eye would arrive. Krasuka 4 can jam or spoof satellite updates, which is why the missiles could fall back to inertial navigation that follows a memorized path without asking the sky for help. INS removes the lie by removing the listener, and when the listener is gone, spoofing dies with it. Still, emitters betray themselves, so a small loitering munition hunted the loudest dish and struck the antenna stack to collapse the jamming bubble. With the jammer blind and the fighters chasing the false heat, the real route stayed dark, and a dark route is a safe route. In this fight, the winning side did not shout. It whispered and made the opponent shout instead. And once the shouting moved away from the river corridor, the way was clear to aim at the plant's heart. Which is exactly why the strike phase had to land inside the building, not on the roof. The strike aimed inside the hall because a factory lives on what it protects, not on the roof that covers it. Warheads with a short delay fuse punched through sheet metal and reinforced layers before detonating, and the blast then expanded inside a closed volume where pressure could not vent. Shockwaves bounced between concrete walls, racks, and ducts, which multiplied overpressure and turned fixtures into cutting fragments. Control racks, test benches, and power cabinets sit close to each other in most electronics bays, so one internal burst can break many links at once instead of leaving cosmetic holes. The goal was not a fireball on camera, but a systems failure that stops guidance boards from leaving the line. That is why a detonation past the roof matters more than scorch marks in the yard. Independent imagery backed the narrative because pictures do not follow talking points. Commercial satellites captured roof sections sagging over a central span, and the support grid showed uneven collapse that points to an internal event rather than an external scrape. Burn patterns spread along ventilation runs and cable trays, a shape that fits hot gas trapped by ducts and pushed by overpressure. Thermal frames taken hours later still showed warm patches under one bay, which signals slow-cooling debris and long-burning material inside. Service roads displayed dark tracks from firefighting traffic that pooled near a single loading zone, a sign that responders focused efforts at the core rather than the perimeter. From these signatures, you can read both the vector of force and the place where the plant hurt the most, which makes the physical scars a map of intent. Damage inside a precision hall carries compound effects because electronics lines do not restart with a broom. Fixtures must be checked for alignment, air filters need full replacement, and electrostatic controls demand cleanroom work that takes expert hands and steady parts. Even when walls stand, calibrating test rigs and requalifying boards can consume weeks, and any missing custom chips stretch that clock further. Forklifts, spares, and crews can move, yet certification cycles move slower than forklifts, so output may lag long after flames die out. A plant can reroute power in days, but it cannot summon validated guidance modules on command, and those modules are what missiles and drones cannot fly without. In short, A strike on the core is a strike on time, and time is the currency that modern production cannot print. The attack also sent a message that distance is a belief, not a shield. A target deep inside national territory fell to a low, precise, and timed approach that slipped past sensors because planning turned geography into cover and noise into a tool. Defenders spent interceptors on loud decoys and chased heat blooms while the quiet track hit the room that mattered, so cost and attention both bent toward the attacker's plan. This outcome does not mean air defenses are useless. It means they can be overloaded, misled, or pulled away from the decisive square on the board. When a network reacts to many threats at once, a single route can stay dark long enough to matter, and that short window is all a cruise missile needs. Which brings the focus to what damage beyond the fence looks like, because the real weight of this strike sits in supply chains and in the minds that must manage them. The real cost of this strike shows up in time, because lost time breaks schedules before metal breaks machines. Analysts expect short outages in guidance electronics for cruise missiles and UAVs, since precision boards need clean rooms, calibrated rigs, and certified teams. A damaged hull does not restart with a broom, as test benches must be realigned and anti-static controls must be rebuilt to standard. Even a minor gap in custom chips creates a bottleneck, and a bottleneck slows final assembly across many plants at once. Delays flow like water through pipes, so one choke point can idle workers far from the blast site. This is why a hit on core electronics ripples wider than a fire in storage yards, because guidance parts are hard to swap and slow to validate. In that light, disruption matters more than debris, since disruption steals output from tomorrow's order book. And stolen output is what operations fear most when wars burn through stocks. Return on investment favors the attacker, because cheap decoys always drain expensive interceptors first. Pantsir missiles and medium-range rounds cost real money, while munitions like Banshee or other drones are built for trade. Every engagement that kills a decoy burns readiness and lengthens reload cycles, which opens a brief lane for a real strike. Scrambling fighters adds fuel and fatigue while pulling cover from other sectors, so the clock starts working for the salvo the moment jets lift. When defenders split attention across loud pictures, the quiet track gains breathing room, and breathing room converts to reach. The math is not romantic, yet it wins, because time saved at the point of attack becomes time lost for the defender's next task. The psychological hit sits inside that math, since doubt slows fingers more than fear. After a public breach, operators start to question every echo and every cloud on the scope, which stretches identification loops and delays fire orders. A longer loop protects friendly assets from fratricide, but it also grants intruders more seconds, and seconds are the currency of low-flying weapons. Commanders then conserve missiles for the real threat, yet conservation can let the real threat slip through, and that trade eats confidence. Caution spreads across shift changes and briefings, and caution lowers tempo when tempo is the shield. Russian forces will try to close the gap with more EO/IR posts, gap filler radars, dispersed workshops, and tighter convoy protection. Ukraine will answer with jam-resilient navigation, multiplane routes, and sharper electronic decoys that pull emitters away from the true axis. Both sides will adapt fast, but the side that controls the decision clock will shape the field first. And that brings the story back to purpose, because what happens inside one factory now decides choices across an entire theater. Modern war rewards speed, precision, and control of the information picture, not price tags. The Electrodetal strike proves that when planners read radar gaps and time decoys well, deep territory turns into a front line that can be reached with modest tools. An empty corridor matters more than shiny hardware, because one clean path carries decisive effects across hundreds of miles. Air defenses must plug holes faster than attackers can find new ones, yet sensors, reload cycles, and command handoffs often move on human time, not machine time. Every minute lost to confusion multiplies damage, since delayed tracks and split screens create false choices that waste interceptors and expose real targets. Industrial depth no longer guarantees safety, because guidance chips, test benches, and certification labs cannot be swapped like fuel or bolts. A single disrupted node stalls many lines at once, and stalled lines echo into training schedules, spare pools, and fleet readiness. The attacker's math stays favorable when cheap drones burn expensive shots first, while the finisher arrives inside the reload window. Expect defenders to push lower-tier watchers, smarter jamming, and tighter patrol loops, yet adaptation must outpace the threat, not trail it. Expect attackers to refine multi-axis routes, jam-resilient navigation, and better decoy signatures because tempo is a weapon by itself. The side that closes the OODA loop one turn sooner writes the next day's news, while the slower side pays in lost output and broken schedules. In this race, proof beats promises, and timing beats mass. For clear maps, verified numbers, and sharp breakdowns of weapons and strategy, subscribe to Military Force.